The Inter-Party Advisory Council (IPAC) has expressed concern over what it described as undue interference of the European Union in Nigeria's election through the EU Election Observation Mission without due consideration of the country's sovereignty. IPAC also wondered why the EU interrogates Nigeria's election credibility, why Nigeria nor IPAC had ever interrogated the credibility of elections in EU member states. The national chairman of IPAC, Engineer Yabaji Sani, while briefing journalists after the Council's meeting, said they observed that in the 2023 general election, the EU deployed 51 non-resident observers to Nigeria for a period of 3 months from 11th January to 11th April 2023 to observe the election from the preparatory activities to the conduct of polls and announcement of results. He said, and I quote, "While IPAC does not interrogate the credibility of elections in any of the EU member states, nor question their electoral outcomes, the EU has over the years developed the practice of making pronouncements bordering on Nigerians' domestic affairs without due consideration of the country's independence and sovereignty. This raises the question of your role and neutrality under the Declaration of Principles for International Election Observers and why they should continue to superintend our elections. Is it that we cannot conduct a free, fair, and credible election in our country by ourselves without the presence and validation of the European Union and its election observation mission?" Sani said the EU does not deploy election observation missions to observe elections in advance or other transition democracies in Eastern Central European and Southeast Asia. He further wondered why such inquisitive missions are deployed mostly in Africa, at the end of which their report often fails to take into cognizance the sensibilities and the true realities on ground before, during, and after the elections. The report of the European Union Election Observation Mission to the 2023 general election in Nigeria is based on a number of assumptions derived from an insignificant coverage of 0.059% and 0.033% of the 186,227 and 187,651 electoral locations for the national and state elections on 25th February and 18th March 2023 respectively, he noted. According to him, the IPAC will give the mission and its report the benefit of doubt and take the position that some of the recommendations are useful and should be considered in the preparation and conduct of future elections in Nigeria. However, it is our position that the Independent National Electoral Commission has performed well within the limits of its human resource and infrastructural constraints by introducing technology in its operation. Undoubtedly, some of the outcomes in the election attest to the benefits of increased usage and effective deployment of technology in the conduct of our elections. The outcomes of the election produced the most diverse legislature since 1999, with 9 of the 18 political parties winning legislative seats, 7 in the Senate, 8 in the House of Representatives, and 9 in the state houses of assembly, IPAC said. "We do acknowledge that there were challenges during and after the elections, as in other elections. It is the position of IPAC that lessons have been learned and matters regarding the elections are before the various election petition tribunals across the country." While stating its observation on the 2023 general election, IPAC said, "In terms of constitutional reform, we have improved tremendously as Section 65 of the Electoral Act 2022, which gave the Commission the power to review any declaration or return made by a returning officer, where such a return was not made voluntarily or made contrary to the provisions of the law, was effectively exercised in Adamawa, Abia, Kano, and Enugu State. On the appointment of INEC commissioners, it is a constitutional issue exercised by the executive. IPAC is of the view that any candidate nominated for these positions must be thoroughly screened by the security agency and the Senate to prevent persons of unworthy character from becoming a commissioner, member, or resident electoral commissioner." On access to election results in real time, it seems to us that the EU either did not understand the process or got the procedure wrong. After voting and counting of votes, the result is recorded on Form EC8A and handed over to party agents right there at the polling unit. The introduction of the IRF portal by the Commission is an added value and an improvement in INEC's efforts to promote credibility and transparency by making election results at the polling units available to citizens in real time to interrogate, confirm, and validate election outcomes. Video shows more detail.
Do acknowledge that there were challenges during and after the elections as in other elections. It is the position of IPAC that lessons have been learned and matters regarding the elections are before the various election petition tribunals across the country. You may wish to recall the historic event of 28th February 2023 at the International Conference Center, Abuja, when IPAC, after due consultations, rose to the occasion and encouraged INEC to continue and conclude the process of collection of results for the presidential election to guarantee the survival of democracy in Nigeria. The position taken by IPAC is, however, without prejudice to some of our member political parties who have since approached the courts for redress. Two major opposition parties, the PDP and the Labour Party, as well as three other political parties, disagreed with the outcome of the elections and have since gone to the Presidential Election Petition Court to challenge the outcome of the election, inconsistent with the norms and values of the electoral process. We commend them for following the path of law. However, we really hope that the decision of the court will not be based on some perverse public policy rationale or technicalities, but rather on reasoned and reasonable interpretation of substantive and procedural law. What Nigeria needs now is fairness, equity, and justice. As the tribunal's decision is being awaited, on 27th June 2023, the European Union Electoral Observer Mission to the 2023 general election in Nigeria presented its report to the public. The full report, which is already in the public domain, has understandably become the subject of intense public interest. IPAC carried out a dispassionate review of the report, as well as listened to the views expressed by all stakeholders in the Nigerian democratic process, and has since referred them to the IPAC 2023 Elections Review Committee set up to unearth all immediate and remote causes surrounding the conduct and the outcome of the election. The findings and recommendations of the IPAC Review Committee will assist in engendering dialogue amongst all stakeholders on electoral, legal, and administrative reforms necessary to achieve improved democratic practices in Nigeria. The unprecedented enthusiasm of the Nigerian youth who trooped out in their numbers, despite seemingly insurmountable structural and procedural challenges, were largely due to the unprecedented mobilization efforts by INEC and political parties ahead of 2023 elections. The technological innovations introduced, especially the accreditation of voters using the bimodal voter accreditation system, was a game changer and highly commendable. Mr. Chairman, we must also commend candidates of political parties who crisscrossed Nigeria's most difficult terrains under unprecedented insecurity situation and economic hardships canvassing for votes. The non-transmission of the presidential election results on the IRF platform at the polling units due to technical glitches remains the elephant in the room. Mr. Chairman, as we approach the off-season elections in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi states in November, all hands must be on deck to ensure the resident electoral commissioners and returning officers are not pressured by some governors and INEC itself to falsify results in their states. The Adamawa State 2023 governorship election result declaration saga and the embarrassment caused INEC and the nation at large is a case in point. The prosecution of the Adamawa rake in court by INEC is highly desirable and commendable. Equally desirable is action by all relevant security agencies to check the misuse of state resources in violation of the Electoral Act 2022, which prohibits the use of state apparatus to the advantage or disadvantage of any political party or candidate, Section 92, subsection 2 of the Act. Finally, IPAC understands that there are so many other factors that affected the conduct of 2023 election, such as obvious ethnic profiling, religious sentiments, voter suppression, ballot snatching, hate speech, etc., which are beyond the Commission. Hence, the need for all the key stakeholders to work in